I had been anticipating that dinner for weeks. Not because I believed our marriage was flawless. Those illusions had been fading for some time, but because I hoped maybe, just maybe, we could mend some of it. 12 years. That's a lot of shared memories, countless dinners, many arguments, and quiet reconciliations. Our anniversary always felt like a checkpoint, a chance to start over. The restaurant was the same one where I had proposed. White tablecloths, dim lights softening every edge, and that small window seat in the corner with a view of the city skyline through the wine racks. She wore the same perfume from that night, though I wasn't sure if it was deliberate or just habit. I noticed her sneaking glances at her phone when she thought I wasn't watching. When the waiter poured our champagne, I reached across the table and took her hand. "Happy anniversary, Claire." She smiled softly, but it wasn't quite the smile she used to give. "Happy anniversary, Michael." We exchanged small talk about work, the neighbors, her latest project. I told her about a deal I had closed that afternoon. She nodded politely, but her gaze kept flicking toward the clutch at the edge of the table. A soft vibration came from it midway through the appetizer. She reached for it quickly. Maybe it was her sister, her mom, someone from the family, but she glanced at the screen and hesitated. The corners of her lips twitched. Not a smile, more like an involuntary reflex she couldn't suppress. "Just someone from work," she said, as if reading my thoughts. "It'll only take a second." She slid the phone into her lap, already lifting it to her ear. Something inside me, some instinct I couldn't name, moved before I could think it through. "Here," I said, reaching across. My voice calm, maybe too calm. "Put it on speaker." She froze for a fraction of a second before replying. "It's not speaker," I repeated. She tapped the screen. A man's voice rang out. Deep, warm, far too familiar for a coworker. "Hey, beautiful. Did you get away yet? I've been thinking about you since lunch." My fork stayed frozen. My breath caught. The words hung there, heavy and unapologetic. The restaurant's usual murmur, clinking glasses, quiet chatter, faint jazz from the speakers, seemed to vanish. Or maybe it was still there, but I couldn't hear it over the rush of blood in my ears. The silence between us was louder than any fight we had ever had. Claire's eyes widened, then narrowed. "I'll call you back," she muttered into the phone. Her voice suddenly sharp. She hung up and set it down like it was toxic. "It's not what you think," she rushed to explain. He's going through a breakup. He leans on me sometimes." I said nothing, not because I believed her, but because I couldn't trust my own voice. The waiter arrived with our plates just then, setting them down as if we were any other couple enjoying the night. I watched the steam curl from my steak. She picked up her fork, then set it down again. "I don't want tonight to be like this," she murmured. I let out a short laugh. Not cruel, just exhausted. Neither did I. After that, we ate almost in silence. Conversation reduced to passing the salt and nodding at the waiter's offers for refills. She kept glancing at the phone as if staring hard enough might make it explain itself. I kept looking at her hands, remembering when I thought I could read every thought by watching her fingers tap the table. By dessert, the champagne had gone flat. I think we both knew the night had crossed a line it couldn't uncross, but neither of us said it aloud. The drive home was mostly quiet. The hum of tires on wet asphalt filled the space where conversation should have been. Occasionally, she opened her mouth as if to speak, then closed it again. I kept my eyes on the road, hands at 10 and 2, thoughts circling like vultures over something dying. Pulling into the driveway, she was first out of the car. No pause, no waiting like she used to. Just grabbed her bag and walked inside. I sat a moment in the car, watching condensation creep across the windshield, knowing if I followed her now, we'd have to face it, and I wasn't ready. Inside, she was in the kitchen pouring a glass of wine. "You're quiet," she said without looking up. "Do you want me to be loud?" "Yes." My voice surprised me. Not angry, just flat. She set the bottle down harder than necessary. "Michael, you have to understand it's not what it sounded like." I cut in because it sounded like a man who thought of you as more than a coworker. Her lips pressed together. "You're twisting this. I've told you before." I held up my hand. Claire, I don't want a rehearsed excuse. I want the truth. She looked at me then, really looked at me, and for a moment I glimpsed the woman I married. The one who laughed at my terrible cooking, who cried at movies she swore she wouldn't. But just as quickly it vanished, replaced by something guarded. I'm not doing this tonight, she said, brushing past me. It's late. I'm tired. She walked upstairs, heels clicking against the hardwood, each step a quiet retreat. I stayed in the kitchen, the scent of her wine and perfume lingering in the air. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. I went over every small moment from the past year that hadn't added up. The weekend conferences with no itinerary. The time she'd shower immediately after getting home, claiming she'd had a long day. The sudden bursts of laughter while texting. Laughter she never shared with me. I'd noticed them all but buried each under the same excuse. Marriage gets comfortable, people change, don't be paranoid. Around 2 a.m. I got up and went to my office. Her phone lay on the kitchen counter, face down. I didn't touch it. Not yet. Instead, I opened my laptop and started a document. Just a date and a single line. Anniversary dinner call from coworker. Voice said, "Hey beautiful. Been thinking about you since lunch." I didn't know why I wrote it down. Maybe to keep it straight in my head. Maybe because a part of me already knew I'd need a record. I saved the file and shut the laptop. The next morning, she acted like nothing had happened. Made coffee, talked about errands, kissed me lightly on the cheek before leaving. I stood in the doorway, coffee warming my hands, realizing I no longer believed a word she said. And that was the beginning. Not of an argument, but of a quiet unraveling, the kind you can't stop once it starts. 2 weeks passed before I addressed it again. Not because I forgot, but because I wouldn't corner her without knowing exactly what I faced. I began noticing where her stories didn't match, when she left the house, how long she was gone. I didn't confront her. Didn't change how I acted. If anything, I was gentler, softer. She seemed relieved, like she thought the moment had passed. Then came the night it all broke open. We were out with friends at a new rooftop bar. She excused herself halfway through the evening to take a quick work call. Something in my chest tightened. I followed a few minutes later, just far enough to hear her voice over the wind. "Can't tonight," she said. "He's right here." "No, don't say that. Not now." I waited until she hung up, then stepped forward. "Coworker again," she jumped, clutching the phone. "Michael, put it on speaker," I said just as I had at the restaurant. This time she didn't move. Her lips parted, nothing came out. And in that silence, everything between us shifted. I turned and walked back inside. She followed, hissing my name, trying to grab my arm. I didn't stop. Our friends asked where she'd gone. When she returned, cheeks flushed, she told them I wasn't feeling well, and we left early. Home, she closed the door behind us. "You're making a big deal out of nothing," she said. I met her eyes. "Then why can't you put it on speaker?" Her breath caught, and for a moment I thought she might finally tell me the truth. Instead, she grabbed her bag and went upstairs without a word. That was the last night we slept under the same roof. I didn't announce I was leaving. I packed a bag the next morning, took my laptop, and moved to a short-term rental downtown. She called twice. I didn't answer. Later that week, a mutual friend mentioned she was telling people we were taking space. I didn't correct him. Silence can hurt worse than shouting. At the restaurant, when her coworker spoke to her as if she belonged to him, the silence afterward told me everything I needed to know. It was the sound of something ending, not with slammed doors or broken plates, but a stillness you can't undo. I replay that moment in my head sometimes. Not his words, but the pause after, when she looked at me across the table, phone in hand, realizing I had heard the truth. And that silence was louder than any fight we could have had. Still is.